Good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Jamestown Public School Board to order. It is Monday, April 7th, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. We'd like to thank all those who are joining us this evening. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Melissa, would you read the school board norms?
The board-developed norms are to share and respect opinions and speak with a unified voice once a decision has been reached. Execute all duties of the school board in compliance with the North Dakota Century Code, properly prepare for meetings, and commit to assessing board effectiveness and ensure high-quality governance for all stakeholders.
Thank you, Melissa. We have no public communication. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Any conflicts of interest? Melissa?
I have a conflict of interest in the consent agenda with the open enrollment applications. I am related to one of the individuals.
Any other conflicts of interest? Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda. Would anyone like anything removed from the consent agenda? Anything removed? There's one clarification. The minutes of March 3rd, if the board does not mind, it's all accurate, except I'd just like to clarify under the UJ agreement, there were two conflicts, and if we would just put the vote was, it says unanimous, if we could just put a vote was 7-0, if the board is willing to do that.
Yeah, we can fix those if you approve that.
Okay. Anything else on the consent agenda? Outside that change in the including that change and the conflict of interest with it, is there a motion? Motion by Jamie, second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote outside those items noted, for conflicts, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving on to our regular meeting tonight, we have recognition of DECA. Jacob, would you please read our DECA?
No one should. The DECA chapter from Jamestown High School celebrated 2 state champions at the North Dakota DECA State Conference held in Bismarck. Nevia Ramfo secured first place in state championship in the restaurant and food service management role play event, and Carson Mugley secured first place in a state championship in the human resources management role play event. Their achievement will make them able to attend the DECA International Career Development Conference in Florida. We thank their advisor, Mr. Shane Eddy.
Heidi, if I can get you over here, then we'll do the picture. Mr. Need, we'll do a picture over this way. Thank you.
We appreciate the work that our staff does, and teachers and staff do with all their advising of these great organizations that give our students opportunities, so thank you. We have nothing under correspondence tonight. Under reports, strategic plan progress monitoring, number 1, strategic focus 5, resource management and planning goal 1, number 2, strategic focus 3, leadership of learning goal 2. And Dr.
I will
Luck
start
and
with
Mr. Gaylor.
Yeah, I will start with leadership this is resource management and planning goal 1. As the board is aware, we operate a capital projects plan, a 10-year capital projects plan, and embedded into that is this goal. Jamestown Public Schools will annually approve a plan to address existing facility needs that allocate 100% of available funding to the highest priority areas. We know through this 10-year capital projects plan that we have much more identified over that 10-year span than we have funds available, so we need to prioritize. And basically what this goal says, goal number 1, it says goal 2 here. I apologize when I was moving through these, but essentially what this says is that we're going to prioritize all of our available funding, and I'll identify that as we go along. One thing I'll note is you'll see this in my board report, and you'll also see it as an approval for the updated capital projects plan. So you'll see this a few times in this meeting. So again, we identify and prioritize our facility needs through a 10-year capital projects plan. It's a rolling plan, so what I mean by that is we add a new year every year and we shift everything over. We identify across 7 different schedules. Those are asbestos abatement, building updates, sites, roofs, ADA, safety and security, and equipment. The process that we use to make this prioritization starts with the building principals. We send a form to them that they identify what their needs are, those that are already in the capital projects plan, and any new needs that they see. That process then moves to the central office administration, Mrs. Grounds, Mr. Wagner, who's our facilities and grounds director, Mr. Gaylor, and myself. We meet, we review, and we again prioritize those needs. We bring that recommendation to the board's facility committee. They review, and then the final approval is here. So it isn't just a kind of stab in the dark in terms of what we're going to prioritize. A lot of different perspectives have gone into this process to identify what the summer projects and what the annual projects for this next year will be. So if the goal is to spend all of the available funding, we anticipate having needs. The target for the building fund is a little over 1.1 million. That includes 10 mils towards the building fund and 3 mils through special assessments. Our proposed expenditures slightly exceeds that goal of 100% of funding, which includes those special assessment expenditures, debt financing for the middle school green space on Washington campus. And I just made a note in the presentation that retires in 28-29, and then the entirety of our summer 2025 summer projects. So one new thing that you'll see when we do the approved updated annual plan, or when I ask you to approve the annual plan update, you'll see a slightly lower number than what we've identified in the past. The reason for that is Washington Elementary being retired. That becomes removed from the capital projects plan with the retirement of that building. So that's why you see that slightly down from the 32+ million number that you've seen in the past. So if you look at the schedules themselves, we have no anticipated expenditures in asbestos. Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 is always the bulk, or has almost always been the bulk of our annual spending, is generally in building repairs, and that's about $548,000. In sites, $92,000. In roofs, $50,000 in targeted expenditures. And I'll talk about the roofs just in a little bit more in just a second. Nothing in ADA. In Schedule 6, which is safety and security, $80,000, and then in equipment, $108,000, which is a little bit more than what we annually provide into equipment, but we'll talk about that in the next slide here. So we have talked in the past about prioritizing roofing needs. Every year, we have a contractor come through, assess all of our roofs, give us recommendations on what roofs should be prioritized in that summer session. This time they have suggested that we might have priorities in other areas. They didn't have a roof that they felt needed to be replaced in this cycle. So we were able to look then at other priorities that we haven't been able to target because roofs and other expenses have taken priorities. We felt like this allowed us the time to address more of our food service needs. We have pushed those into later dates in the past because we haven't had available funding, and without roofing, we felt that now was the right time to address some of those needs. That includes flooring replacement, countertop replacements at Roosevelt and Gusner's, dishwashers at various schools, what we call combi ovens. Those are helpful for our buildings that are doing much more scratch cooking, so cooking from scratch, and they need those to support doing that increased scratch cooking. Other building needs were the replacement of shop doors, HVAC needs at JVCTC, that we just approved that in the last board meeting in change order number 7. Asphalt replacement at JVCTC as we do that building project up in that space. We do need to replace the asphalt up in that area. Bleachers for elementary activities were prioritized, and they were prioritized because a PTO agreed a 50% match. They came at the right time to ask for that request. Facilities Committee reviewed that and felt that was a reasonable request with that match. Safety updates include enhanced welding ventilation, and we're also taking a pilot approach to safety glass, 3M safety glass, in some of the priority locations, like where we see the most amount of traffic. And just a reminder, the board is well aware of this. We've talked about it before, but we include in our capital projects plan what I call various buckets, and that's where we put annual expenses like our maintenance needs, building repairs, HVAC repairs, floor replacements, painting, roof repair, safety updates, sidewalk repairs, things like that, all go into those buckets, and those are coded separately in those buckets by Christy in her budget. So next steps, later on in this meeting, you'll approve hopefully you'll approve the updated capital projects plan. And after that, we'll contact the various contractors, schedule those projects. If we need to, we'll follow procurement laws and bid them out. When we go beyond our financial thresholds, that require us to do that by law. The other next steps would be just the board's long-term commitment to updating the capital projects plan each year as part of our summer projects. And with that, I would stand for questions on focus area 5 and goal 1.
Melissa.
I just had a question, if you could clarify a little bit more what the bleachers were for at the elementary school?
They're elementary activities. Gustner Elementary hosts the majority, if not all, of our elementary activities, and there's no seating. There's really just they're either putting chairs out or they're using it's a wooden bench that goes along the west side of the gymnasium. Felt it would be safer to have telescopic bleachers involved on the west area of the gym. And again, I don't know that we would have prioritized this outside of the 50% match of the PTO.
I guess that was more my question, is like, okay, how storage-wise, but you said they kind of telescope out.
They're telescopic, and they're still 3 feet from the court, which is what they can be to meet safety code.
Any other questions? Jamie.
If I remember correctly, we have a roofing project that wasn't quite finished last year. Is that correct?
That'll still be completed this year, but that is not part of the summer projects out of this. That's already been covered in our last summer projects. It's just when they're completing the work. So that's still being completed.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. I'm glad our.
If you want to just have one motion.
Should we do one motion? Is the board okay with one motion for both? Okay, all right. And thank you to our facilities committee. This, you can see just by this presentation, the amount of time that they put into this, so thank you. Mr. Gaylor, are you going to do the second part, leadership of learning?
Good. Okay. All right, so this is 3.2 in Leadership for Learning, and our goal is that we build capacity for personalized learning. If you go back to the previous slide, it talks about some things that we aspire to in Leadership for Learning. Things like all students are all learners. That includes us as adult learners engaged in our learning environment. We provide students with relevancy, with connection, and equitable access, that students have an opportunity to explore their interests, and that we develop ownership in their own personalized learning and growth. So this goal is not a specific measurable goal, but it's really to build capacity towards that vision or that focus under Leadership for Learning. One of the things about this goal is that it also connects to other goals that we have, and student engagement and student achievement, and our goals around more community integration. All of that kind of comes into this one bubble of personalized learning. There's some outcomes in those. The outcomes in this goal are really specific to just how do we build capacity and in our community and in our educators as we implement this. So,
If you've remembered from that dashboard in the past, this would be considered a driver metric.
yep. Okay, so how are we building that capacity? From a staff standpoint, we've had some professional learning opportunities. These are almost all exclusively grant supported or initiatives within the state of North Dakota. So there are many other districts that take part in these opportunities. There's the Northern Cass Personalized Learning Conference that happens every summer. We've had several educators attend that over the last 3 years. There's a North Dakota Personalized Learning Network. There are several districts that were part of a state-funded opportunity to engage with a group called Knowledge Works, and then that transformed into this Personalized Learning Network, which includes site visits and workshops that we've had teachers participate in. There's another group that's been working mostly through Northern Cass with a group called Two Revolutions that is implementing pieces of this framework as well. There's been supports through SEEC with different trainings that relate to personalized learning. All of it goes back to those messages of how do we make learning increasingly relevant. It's relevant now, but how do we get even better at that? How do we make it increasingly personal so that I can see my own interests as a learner in what's happening in the classroom? And how do we make sure that we have outcomes for all kids? One of the foundational pieces that's not on this list, but is really what we've talked a lot about, which is standards-based learning. If we know what our standards are, it's much easier to understand what the rigor is of the standard, and we know that we've got a solid floor to stand on and to expand into areas like personalized learning. So these are some elements from the North Dakota Personalized Learning Network. Hard to see up there, but probably easier to see if you zoom in on your own presentation. But it's about those same things that we have that we're striving for in Leadership for Learning, about learner agency. How do we get kids to own their learning more? How do we build solid relationships with students and with our community? How do we have a continuum of learning? Things like our scales that we've built. How do we show students that learning goes on a continuum? Learner supports. How do we make sure all kids have access and are supported in their learning, that they demonstrate their learning? So you probably have been invited into classrooms where students are presenting on what they've learned, or they have a community presentation, or our DECA students. We just heard about their stellar examples, or our robotics students. All of our students are out performing, but this is how do we get that into the core experience at a regular enough cadence that kids have those opportunities to solve problems, present all of the things that you guys know are important. And then relevant learning experiences. How do we make sure that not all of the time, but when the standards call for experiences that could also impact the community, that our kids have an opportunity to do things like that. So I feel like I'm explaining a little bit of the goal at the same time, but that maybe helps you understand. So at the elementary level, we implemented a learning management system in Empower that really shows how do those standards flow together over time, and increasing our level of feedback on the standards gives students more ownership over their learning. Next steps really for them is to continue to incorporate more student choice and voice into how they show what they've learned, and also in goal setting so that they are able to own those goals, see their progress, and track that progress over time. For the middle school, they're preparing to implement standards-based learning. So Any of these training opportunities have been opt-in types of opportunities. At this point, the goal says we're building capacity for that. We have a lot of other things that are going on at the same time. And so people who are ready for that next step have taken that step. We've had some middle school educators engage in the professional learning opportunities. They're really focused on that implementation of standards-based learning at this time. In their curriculum, they're working to ensure that we have relevancy and connection and community partnerships in things that they already do pretty well here, but we can continue to get better in. High school action steps, we've had teachers be able to attend those professional learning opportunities. They're working on a pilot. We've been practicing with a pilot for how do we track non-academic skills, what we call career-ready practices at the high school level in Power School. So our CTE teachers have been doing that for a few years now. And then we actually have Tony McIntyre will be presenting at the Personalized Learning Conference this summer, as well as some elementary educators presenting. But Tony's going to be presenting on that subject of a senior capstone project that he works on in English 4. Okay, so next steps, we're kind of laying the foundation, building capacity in this area, continuing to offer training opportunities. Some of those things were funded with maybe ESSER through the state. There's a state personalized learning network that continues to meet and set up these opportunities. I think even though this is a driver and not an outcome, it still gives visibility to the importance that this is something we aspire to. I think it's an important goal to continue. And I think that, as we approach that season where we're looking at strategic plan, I think it's something important to keep in our sights. After SBL implementation, which I kind of described earlier as the floor for this, I think that you're going to see more people say, hey, now I want to know how do I make how do I get our students to have more ownership in this? How do I make this into the same outcome, but a community-focused project that also has good outcomes for our community relationships, or gives people from the outside an opportunity to come in and share their expertise with our students. We want to establish that floor and then move forward with this maybe more aggressively in the future. But I think that it's a good, I feel good about the spot that we're in now and having the opportunity for people to start to engage in it. I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions from the board? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Gaylord.
Okay, thank you.
On the motion.
So, we have strategic plan progress monitoring, number 1, strategic focus 5, resource management and planning, goal 1. Number 2, strategic focus 3, leadership for learning, goal 2. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa? Second by Jason. We have a motion and a second for approval of strategic plan progress monitoring 1 and 2. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Leck.
Thank you. You do have my written report. Excuse me. I'm going to jump down to the bottom of page 1, policy FDF, the foreign exchange students. The board is aware you had a public comment related to foreign exchange students. I did take some time, looked through policy, and I visited privately with the requesting individual, and I was open about my recommendations, what I would be recommending to the board, and the rationale for that throughout that conversation with the patron. From my perspective, policy FDF, and it's specifically outlined in guideline D, that host families be residents, and I think there's a few important reasons for that. The first is that the policy limits the number of foreign exchange students. So if you open that up beyond those that are residents, you could be in a position in which you've approved 5 non-resident families, and now resident families would be limited or would be unable to have foreign exchange students, even though they're residents of the district, because you've given those slots outside. And I'm sure that's why the policy was drafted that way, to limit to residential or to families that live as residents of Jamestown Public Schools. The other key piece in this discussion as well is that state foundation aid is not eligible for foreign exchange students. So the cost of it is borne by the resident taxpayer. So my recommendation is to maintain the policy as it is, that if you'd have foreign exchange students, that they must be living within the residence of the Jamestown Public School District. If there is a desire, and I would, if that is the direction the board would like to go, to open that up to non-resident families, I do have some suggestions that the language would be for the superintendent to create some procedures for the consideration of non-residents. As an example, those that open enroll that live outside of the district but open enroll in, or families open enroll in. And I think the specific example that was given, again, my concern would be that you are taking potential slots away from resident families. But if that is the will of the board, that's the direction that I would like to take that. Just with that, I'm going to pause for questions if there are any.
Melissa?
I know in the past we had quite a few foreign exchange students, and I'm kind of out of touch with that since my kids are no longer in the high school. Have we had all of those positions filled within our district, or is that something where there are positions that are still open and there's vacancies?
Yeah, we almost always fill the quota of 5. And there's some other regulations that we have in place, and only one from every country to give people the true exchange experience. And I think the policy is a well-written policy, but generally speaking, we filled that quota up almost every year, if it isn't every year.
Any other questions from the board? Jamie?
Is there a way that we could, after the 5 spots are filled, go on a base-to-base, like, approval process or something?
You certainly
That's
could. It becomes a little challenging without set rules. Like we have rules that, that by the end of June 30th, by July 1st, our cutoff. Then we don't accept applications anymore. The rules of only one per country of residents to give them the exchange experience. I think when we blur the lines, it becomes easier to blur the next line. And I guess I would suggest from a policy standpoint that you're firm on what you're firm on. And if it's 5, then it's 5. If it's July 1st, that's what the deadline is. And if it's no more from one country, otherwise, there's always a reason for individual circumstance. That's why I think it's easier to keep the policy as it is. And again, I'm the vehicle here, so if the board wants to go in a certain direction, I've given you the rationale for why I believe that to be the case, that the policy is written as it is. But if there's different direction, just let me know and we can work on something.
Jason, you look like you're in thought there.
That's scary. So when these students apply for this program, are they applying to enroll in said district around Jamestown, or how does that process work? I mean, are they applying for a specific district or just the program?
They apply to the program and they are placed, is my understanding. We don't have a lot to do with the placement of those, but there's different individuals that work within regions and they place within those regions. But no, I don't believe that a foreign exchange student from another country says, I want to be in this particular school district. They apply to be part of this program, and then they get placed somewhere. I'm sure there's some level of criteria and opportunity to personalize that, but I don't know exactly how that process unfolds from the student standpoint.
Steve?
So in the, I guess what the lady had brought forward, if there were host families that are not part of our district, could they not just enroll in Barnes County North, or are there certain districts that don't accept them, or why is this an issue, I guess?
Yeah, I can't speak to other districts, but I don't know of any districts off the top of my head that do not accept foreign exchange students. They would certainly have that opportunity to be within their own district. The request was, could we accept surrounding families, those that live outside the district, to enroll here, different opportunities, more students, probably the driver there, but no, they certainly would have the opportunity to request that of their resident district.
This is a different question, I guess, then. So how much work is it if we have a certain timeline where if the 5 are not filled, then we would allow other applications?
Yeah, that's certainly possible. The 5 slots usually start to fill up, about this period of time. Is when we start getting, because there's competing agencies that do placement of foreign exchange students. And so almost every year, I would say probably half of the time, we either are at 5 or past the deadline when individuals start asking, and those slots are usually filled up.
Melissa?
If I remember correctly, the reason she had come forward was because the host family had children that come to the Jamestown, and that's why they wanted to.
So I think one option for the board, right now our policy's pretty black and white and pretty firm. One option, if the board wanted to allow an exception, and I think my thought is, instead of creating a bunch of different languages and criteria, is that if we created some sort of exception form that the superintendent could review based on the numbers for that year and other circumstances. Otherwise, just my thoughts, otherwise we leave it as is, or we, instead of, doing up to, if we don't have 5, then this, or if we don't have this, then that. That way, it just would be kind of a catch-all kind of process, and the administrators work with the high school and whatever else, work together on that. Melissa?
My personal opinion is, if we are not having any problems filling those 5 slots, and 5 is what we've been doing, that we just leave it as 5, because I would hate for somebody to have to go outside of the district if they're here because we've filled our 5 and we've let somebody from another district come in. So I would be open to revisit in the future if we're seeing that those numbers are not getting filled. But since it's not an issue right now, I would say that we leave it as is.
Jason?
And is 5 the quota that we have selected as a district? Okay. I think, it's obvious the common ground here is that we don't want anyone to miss an opportunity if there's an opening or what have you. Would it make sense for us to consider our original 5, and then if we would, what it would look like to have a quota of 6, but one of those 6 is for a potential out of district? I don't know what that would look like, or if that makes sense, but that was just my thought.
My only consideration for that would be, there are times when we're above the 5, and we deny resident families as well, because we've reached that 5. And so that would again kind of be in the same scenario where we're denying a resident family.
Any other comments from the board? Do we, if someone doesn't want it brought back, we will leave it as is and revisit in the future if there's any changes. Steve, did you have a
Yeah,
comment?
just one other question. Does a host family or the student or the program, whatever, do they have the opportunity to pay that so that there is no taxpayer burden? Or would that affect anything?
Well, I would have to look at North Dakota Century Code as it relates to tuition agreements, and I would have to look to see if that's even allowable, because usually that's for residents. I think the language is specific to resident in Century Code. But this is an area I can keep looking at too, if it's something that, what I'm hearing right now is let's maintain as it is and just keep our minds open to other alternatives if there are any. Okay?
Continue on.
Okay, moving into the Washington Elementary transition. This is just an area of the superintendent's report that I'll continue to have until this transition is complete, so it'll be a while. Just to give some updates, we've sent out a notification letter to our Washington families regarding the boundary placements. We've included a frequently asked questions document that's also in the resource center that our tech department is helping us to maintain. And I've discussed that before. A district leadership team met. We started walking through all the different protocols and procedures for retiring a building. And I think right now there's about 50 different steps that we've identified, or things that need to happen. Everything from, the moving of assets to insurance, to everything across the board. And I've listed out some categories. This is certainly a work in progress, but everything from asset management and facility planning, building and facilities, moving and storage, technology and equipment, records and documentation, furniture, classroom items, legacy items, communication, financial and asset reporting, and then a final walkthrough, or just kind of the overarching categories that we've identified thus far, but still something that we're continuing to work on and work through as we think about retiring a building. I wanted to draw attention to Emma Mickelson. She teaches third grade at Washington. She's done such a fantastic job in organizing some celebrations for the retirement of Washington. She's organized, or is working towards, a farewell fair, a community open house to honor the legacy of Washington Elementary, and then a last day event. She's really done a great job, not only with organizing these events and getting feedback from lots of different people, but also has done quite a bit of fundraising. And so we've made some district commitment, but her budget was included, it was pretty comprehensive, and so we couldn't do everything. And so she's done quite a good job with different levels of fundraising, and the community has been very supportive, which we appreciate as well. But I wanted to draw attention and honor the work that she's been doing. As I said, we have a resource center. I put a link to that. You can see one other thing that is fairly new to this process. We've talked about it before, but we felt like we needed to do a better job this cycle in building capacity in the community around our facility needs. So we broke that down into 3 questions, and we recorded a series of videos. So 4 different stakeholders around 3 key questions. Why was Washington retired? Why is now the right time to consider facility needs? And then what options have been identified? And so throughout the course of the next few weeks, we're pushing out 2 of those videos a week. Right now, we're still on why was Washington retired. Later on this week, we're going to transition into why is now the right time to decide the facility needs. So that's something we've had some good feedback on from the community. Quite a few views that have come to those, and the feedback has, like I said, have been good. And these are also then uploaded. Quentin does a great job of making sure that they get uploaded right away to that resource center. So we've had 3 out so far. I think we recorded a total of 20-some different segments. Those won't all be posted, but they'll all just serve a different need for us. I have talked already about the capital projects plan. We'll act on that later as a board. I've talked about a couple different areas to provide a little bit more detail. into what some of those projects are. The Teacher Leadership Academy, we are targeting St. John's Academy as our partner this year. And hopefully we'll have interested individuals from St. John's Academy to go through that Teacher Leadership Academy with us. Anticipate starting in summer of 2025, and then they will complete their program through 5 semesters in December 2026. A couple legislative, I've included a number of different bills, but maybe just to bring attention to a couple. House Bill 1160 and Senate Bill 2354. Those are the hog-housed bell-to-bell restrictions to cell phones. 1160 actually failed last week, but it was brought back. It was under reconsideration earlier today, and it passed, as well as 2354 passed off the floor today with a handful of different amendments. So the next step for the legislature now is to take these 2 bills, because they are so similar. They are going to go into conference committee, and then whatever bill comes from conference committee will get voted on both branches, and will go forward to the governor for whichever bill comes from that conference committee will then get forwarded to the governor to be signed. 1176 is the most likely property tax reform or reduction bill. That's been revised a little bit. You might have read a little bit in the paper about that, moving down to $12.50 for a property tax. Who knows? There's still lots of discussion. That'll have to go back to conference committee as well. 1144 is not one that I brought to your awareness in the past. That actually relates to Century Code for accommodation of transgender students, but an amendment was added in the House on 1144, which we've been monitoring because it addresses bathrooms and shared communal sinks. And as that's defined, that could be everything from science labs to, if you've been in Gustner or Louis L'Amour, there are shared communal sinks outside of the bathrooms. In Gustner's sake, that's original to the building, so about 1958. But that would be required to be removed if 1144 in this current draft would pass. And it's not just Jamestown Public Schools and a couple of different buildings that would be impacted. You're probably talking about many, many millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars across the state in construction costs that would need to be expended to get all public schools to code on communal sinks. Like I said, it's not just communal sinks in new construction. You'd be talking science labs too, and you'd be talking about those that have existed in for 50, 60, 70 years in some of these buildings. So just something that, again, I've been discussing and that I've been monitoring, and just to bring your awareness. 2104, I'm just going to bring that back. That bill, at the time that I wrote this, had received a do not pass. Since that time, it has been defeated on the floor of the House, but I'm hearing that there's potential for 2104 to come back under reconsideration as well. So just something else to monitor. Under the spotlight, I wanted to bring attention to our food service department. They have a number of different awards that they have received in the last month. The Small or Rural Trailblazer Award, they're the only winner. That's a national award, and they're the only winner in North Dakota. And they were awarded for a reduction of sodium in their recipes, but they'll be recognized in Las Vegas at the National Fall Healthy Meals Summit. They also won the innovation in the preparation of school meals. That was for scratch cooking, so for their different scratch recipes that have come, and that's, again, a national award, but they were the only selected North Dakota winner. Beyond that, we have 2 individuals, and we'll have them up here for recognition to the board at some point in the future. But we had 2 staff awarded the state awards of Lori Podal, Kitchen Assistant Employee of the Year, and then Melissa Doctor, who's the Manager of the Year. She's the cook manager at Jamestown. Both are at Jamestown High School. So with that, completes my report. I would stand for questions if you have any.
I think we just need to get a round of applause, though, for the spotlight. Okay. Jason?
Bill 1144 with sinks, is that all public facilities? Or just public schools?
Public schools.
And that's any public school facility regardless of age?
Yeah.
It includes adult area, staff?
Any public school building.
Okay.
Correct. I think that would meet the definition, yes. That wasn't the intent of the amendment, but that's the practical application of the amendment, yes. But
Jamie.
you are talking tens of millions of dollars across public schools.
And is there any financial supports
No,
to that bill? Okay.
no.
To do the repairs? Jamie?
I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed the videos. I think that's a great idea to get that information out to our community. And then also, if there are any dates that school board members can attend the Washington School celebrations, I would be interested in hearing about those.
We will get those dates and information hopefully in my next report.
Yep. Yes, and good point, Jamie. I've been hearing positive comments on the videos, so people are watching them. So very good. Any other questions or comments from the board? Steve?
Are there any other districts in the state that are doing something similar to the TLA?
Yeah, there's a number of different teacher leadership academies that go on across the state. I would like to say that the University of Jamestown's version is the best version, but there are a number of others that do that as well.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. If not, moving on in our agenda, we have nothing under old business. Under new business, activities A.
Board education.
Oh, what? Did I miss something?
Board education.
Okay. Oh, did we miss that? Okay. Board education, Dr. Luck, you want to do the open meeting? I jumped over that, sorry about that. Thank you.
So this is a piece of board education that I know everybody in this room has heard before, but open meetings and open records are part of a regular rotation of board education. I think it's important that we continue to come back to open meetings and open records, executive session, just to continue to receive board education on this topic because law is very prescribed on open meeting and open records. I'm going to just start with who is subject to open meeting and open records. If you look at North Dakota law, our sunshine laws are some of the clearest in the nation in terms of what is open to the public. In other states, states make these decisions for themselves. In North Dakota, we have made the decision that almost everything is open. There's very little that's closed. In some states, you can even have evaluation meetings in closed session. In North Dakota, there's only a couple of things that happen in a closed session. I'll talk about those, but for the most part, almost everything, almost all public business is done in the open, or what they call open. So who does it apply to? It applies to, in almost everything I'll talk about, it lives in Century Code 44-04-17.1. But a public entity is subject to open meetings. So what is a public entity? A public or governmental body, boards, bureaus, commissions, or agencies of the state, or any political subdivision, including any entity created or recognized by the Constitution, state statute, resolution, ordinance, rule, by law, order of the governor, etc., supported by or expending public funds, acting as an agent or agency of a public entity, performing a government function on behalf of a public entity. I won't read every slide, but this, I think you can see school boards fit pretty well into who is subject. You are very clearly a public entity. So what makes a meeting? A quorum. So, and we'll talk about how that changes slightly with committees, but a quorum of a governing body of a public entity discussing public business becomes a meeting. Again, this is under 44-04-17.1. There's some caveats to each of these, but you know, the quorum of a governing body discussing public business is a meeting. So that begs the question, well, what is public business? What does that mean? I've highlighted a century code that says all matters that relate or may foreseeably relate to the performance of the public entity's government functions. So almost everything that you do becomes a matter of public business. Some of the exceptions that you see that come about is meetings of national, regional, or state associations. So for example, when you go to the North Dakota School Boards Association for an annual conference, you don't have to post a meeting for those conferences. That's a meeting of the national, regional, or state association. Chants or social gatherings, sometimes we get this question, well, what happens if we're all in, or a quorum of the board is all having supper at the Buffalo City Grill? Are we suddenly, are we having a meeting, or does one of us have to leave? No, you're not conducting public business. And that comes back to public business. You can be in the same place in chants, social gatherings. You can all be at the Jamestown high school girls basketball game. That does not constitute public business. However, if you start discussing the board meeting, the actions that were taken, or actions that are forthcoming that you that may come up before the board, those are the times when you have to consider, well, this suddenly becomes public business, or this becomes a meeting. Most of the time when you see, if you go through the Attorney General's website, you'll see, you can go and list all of the different investigations that have happened over open meetings. And I'd actually encourage you to do that. Go check it out. There's many that occur every year, at least inquiries about, you know, was a open meetings violated. They're almost always done accidentally. We didn't realize. I didn't know that making that phone call to somebody would constitute a serial meeting, or I didn't realize that we were talking about public business. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to have this reconnection to open public meetings on a regular basis for board education, because sometimes we forget that those minute details that could lead us to an open meetings violation. The other, delegation to one person. So if one person represents the board at a meeting, that's not a meeting. But if two or more are provided that representation of the board, that suddenly becomes a committee, which is subject to open meetings. As I said, there's no exceptions for committees, so it doesn't matter if it's 2, 3, or 4. That's still you are designated by the board, so you are acting on behalf of the board. And it doesn't matter if you don't have the final authority in that committee to make a decision, that you're not acting on behalf of the board, even though you're just having conversations. You could just be fact-finding, you could be brainstorming, you could be coming up with recommendations for the full board. That doesn't make a difference. It's still a committee, and so it's still subject to open meeting laws. So how can a meeting occur? So sometimes when we consider a meeting, we consider this. We come to the Thompson Community Room at 5:30, and we invite all of the board members and the public. That's a meeting. But meetings can happen in other ways. There are times when individual board members can't come, or we do a telephone meeting, or we do a Zoom meeting. All of those are subject to meeting laws. It could be at a restaurant, again, not a chance meeting, but if you're conducting public business before, with a quorum of the board, that becomes a meeting. Meetings can happen on very short notice. There's a myth of a 24-hour rule for a special meeting. I don't know where that comes from, but it's not the law. It's not in Century Code anywhere. You certainly want to provide enough time to have a special meeting, but there is not law that says you can't have a special meeting until it's been posted for 24 hours. But it can happen on very short notice. It can happen over video conference, and it can happen through email over a series of days. They call them serial meetings. So things to consider. If you're ever in doubt, treat it like a meeting. If you're uncertain, post the meeting. Post an agenda. Make sure that the public is aware. Don't hit, that's why we say, you've heard me or other members of the board or district say, don't hit reply all to emails. Those could create serial meetings. If you are asking about board business or even asking sometimes innocent questions that aren't intended, but collectively they could become serial meetings. Don't straw poll. I think that's an obvious one, but you don't want to contact other board members and say, what do you think about that motion? Are you going to vote yes on that? I wonder, of course we know we can't do that. The biggest thing is be cautious of serial meetings. Small emails, telephone calls, private conversations that when strung together could be considered a series of meetings between two or more board members that led to discussions that should have happened in a public meeting that should have been heard by the public. Because when those individual meetings happen, they could take away the discussion that should happen at a board meeting. So in those cases, the public misses the conversations or the dialogue that you have had as board members, either through email, by telephone, or in person, that should have happened in an open meeting. So when you're posting, one of the keys that I would say is make sure that your agenda topic is not vague. Kind of a easy rule of thumb is that anybody, whether they're on the board or a patron of the community, should be able to look at your agenda and know exactly what you're acting on. Don't be vague. Say things like contract approval. Well, contract approval for what? Are you talking about a contractor? Are you talking about a memorandum of understanding? Are you talking about the teacher's contract? Are you talking about an individual teacher contract or an administrator? What are you talking about? There should be clear enough that anybody should understand, for anybody from the public should understand what exactly the board is acting on. It shouldn't be ambiguous. Where do you post the agenda? It should be at the main office. For us, at the main office, it should be a central location, or you can put it on the district's website. It should include the location of the meeting and the time, and it should be given to anybody that requests it. So if somebody wants to know, if somebody reaches out to Amy or myself and says, I want to know about every board meeting that you're going to have from now and through the rest of the year, we provide that when we send out to these other entities. Then we send out those agendas to everybody else, whether that's a committee meeting for the finance, or it's a regular board meeting or a special board meeting, whatever the case is. If that's requested, we send that out. And again, there's no myth. That's a myth of the 24-hour rule. So minutes, that's the listing of what the minutes should include. And again, that's listed right in Century Code 44-04-21. You have two kinds of meetings, regular and special. In a regular meeting, the difference between them, well, of course, a regular meeting has been previously scheduled. A special meeting is scheduled after your regular meetings have already been established. But in a regular meeting, you contain all the topics that you're going to discuss when the agenda is created. In a regular meeting, you can add agenda topics. Districts are going to have rules associated with how that happens. How can you add an agenda topic during a regular meeting? At a special meeting, you can only discuss the things that you posted the notice for in the special meeting. You can't add topics at a special meeting. In a special meeting, you do have to provide notice, though, to the newspaper and anybody that's made those requests. Executive session. I wanted to add in executive session for open meetings. In North Dakota, you can only go into executive session for 4 reasons: to discuss confidential information. This is kind of an outlier because you don't have to make a motion to go into executive session for confidential information, because by law it has to be done in executive session. My rule of thumb, though, is just make the motion to go into executive session. Don't just assume It provides much more clarity, although you have to go into it anyway. To discuss exempt information, the two most common are attorney consultation, and that has to be pending or in light of potential litigation. You can't just decide you want to have a conversation with an attorney, and that happens in executive session. There has to be pending or potential litigation at play. And four, the most common is to discuss negotiation strategy, but that's only if having that discussion in a public meeting would have an adverse effect on the negotiations strategy. So you can't just have it because you want to have it and call it negotiations, or even if it slightly is adjacent to negotiations. The test that you have is that it has to adversely affect negotiations to have it in open session. In some districts or in some states, you could discuss personnel matters or job performance or discussion around a personnel complaint. That's fairly common in a lot of states. In North Dakota, you couldn't do that, but it's one of the more common violations that you will see by the Attorney General in open meetings, is having those discussions in an executive session. So procedurally, we give you a cheat sheet. We include all of the information, all of the steps, all of the motion that you need to make in executive session, so you can just read it. But the procedure is you convene in an open meeting, you announce in open meeting the topics to be discussed and your legal authority to do so. You record the session, and you have to keep that for 6 months. In the event that somebody files a complaint or a question or an inquiry, if that was executive session was appropriate, the Attorney General would need that. The Attorney General's office would need that recorded session to review and then make a judgment. One of the critical pieces of executive session conversation, I think our board does this very well, is making sure that the only thing you can discuss in executive session is is the stated purpose. You can't take side conversations, even if they're natural or tangential to the conversation. You have to make sure that you are only talking specifically about what you've stated in the open meeting that you're going to have a conversation about in executive session. You don't need a motion to exit. You're simply done. When your conversation, when you've served your purpose, you are just ending executive session. The chair will close executive session, and then you're required to re-enter the open meeting to take any formal action. No action happens in executive session, and no board action, only discussion and direction. So with that, I have a couple of resources that I've included in there. But with that, I would stand for questions if you have any.
Any questions from the board? Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Leck. Sorry, I switched those around for you on our agenda. Moving on in our agenda now under G, we have nothing under old business. H, under new business, we have number 1, activities. A, approval of cooperative agreement with Victory Christian School for dance. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa. Second by Jamie. I have a motion, a second, for approval of cooperative agreement with Victory Christian School for dance. Any discussion? Any discussion? I'll make my usual discussion on cooperative agreements, and I know it was noted in there, but I always feel like we want to make sure that we continue to revisit these, that there's room in the programs for Jamestown Public School students. So, and I appreciate the work that is done with that. So, any other discussion? Jacob?
I guess I'll just ask, was there an inquiry from a student from one of these schools, or are we just kind of getting ahead of the game in case that they're...
Mr. Roldson requested to stay ahead of the game and
Okay.
to stay consistent with what we have done for other schools. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other? Jason?
So this motion includes St. John's and Victory? The memo says includes St. John's.
Yeah, that should have said the agenda topic should have said both.
Okay. Just
Yep,
clarification.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for noticing that, Jason. So the agenda, the motion is second. if you're still in approval, is approval of cooperative agreement with Victory Christian School and St. John's for dance. Everyone good with that? Okay.
Thank you for that
Yeah,
catch.
thanks for that catch, Jason. Any other discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 2, building and grounds. Approval of updated capital projects plan. Is there a motion? Motion by Jamie. Second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for approval of updated capital projects plan. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 3, nothing under curriculum assessment instruction. 4, finance. Approval of audit agreement and subsequent audit scope. Is there a motion? Motion by Jamie? Is there a second? Second by Jacob. We have a motion, a second for approval of audit agreement and audit scope. Any discussion? Yes, Melissa.
Is this the report from the auditor that, or is this a totally different?
It's the future agreement
Okay,
to do it again.
okay.
Yep. Any other discussion? We have a motion, a second for approval of audit agreement and subsequent audit scope. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under operations, we have review of CROGDA accreditation report for your information. Is there any questions on that at this time?
Yeah, Mr. Gaylor gave some board education on this a few months ago in preparation. We had seen a draft. Nothing subsequent has changed since that time, but we wanted to put the final document in front of you.
Yep, and thank you for all the people that, all the staff and teachers and administrators that put a lot of time into creating, entering the data for this report. And also thank you to the board. The report, I think, had some positive things to say there as well. So there being no questions, and if you have further questions, and also there's going to be continued follow-up on this that Mr. Gaylor will be back to report on. So, okay. Under personnel, A, approval of 2025 summer school course offerings. And do you care if we do the contracts as well as a board? And B, of 2025 summer school contracts. Is there a motion for A and B? Motion by Jason. Is there a second? Second by Melissa. We have a motion and a second for the approval of 2025 summer school course offerings and approval of 2025 summer school contracts. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. C, approval of a resignation. Chelsea Granzi. Is there a motion? Motion by Jamie. Is there a second? Second by Steve. We have a motion, a second for resignation. Chelsea Granzi. Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Thank you for your service to our district. D, approval to hire for the 2025 to 2026 school year upon successful background check and receipt of licensure. Trevor Wilson, Sydney Solis, and Bonnie Milkey, and including the A approval memorandum of understanding. What was that? Oh, and Matthew Stewart.
Matthew Stewart was added, maybe.
Added, okay, yep, and Matthew Stewart. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa, second by Jason. We have a motion, a second for approval for hire for the 2025 to 2026 school year upon a successful background check and receipt of licensure for 1 through 4. Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved, and welcome to our district. Thank you, Dr. Luck.
And if the motion did not include the approval for the MOU,
Yep, the memorandum.
Okay.
Underground. Yep, the A under 3A. Yep, we read that as part of the original motion, so. Any questions on that from the board? Okay. Number 7, policy and procedures. A, approval of board policies. Can we do these together? Are we good with that? Okay. Rescind policy DFAA teacher evaluation and first reading of policy DFAA teacher evaluation with subsequent approval of the amended DFAA-AR teacher evaluation procedure. Is there a motion? Motion by Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason. We have a motion, a second for 1, 2, and A. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Under tuition, approval of tuition agreements, number 1, Barnes County North student to attend Jamestown Public Schools. Is there a motion? Motion by Jason. Second by Jamie. I have a motion, a second for approval of a tuition agreement, number 1, Barnes County North student to attend Jamestown Public Schools. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Nothing under other. Items for future agenda. Does the board have any items for future agenda? At any time you have an item, please let Dr. Leck or myself know. Under meetings to be scheduled, co-curricular committee meeting on Tuesday, April 15th, 2025 at 3:30 p.m. in the Central Office Conference Room. Finance retreat for negotiations on Tuesday, April 15th, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. in the Central Office Conference Room. Regular school board meeting on Monday, April 21st, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room in the middle school. Transition house graduation on Thursday, May 15th, 2025, 11 a.m. at the Transition House. High school graduation Sunday, May 25th, 2025 at 2:30 p.m. at the Jamestown Civic Center. That's hard to believe we're talking about graduations already. Are there any meetings that we missed? Any facilities or finance or we'll have a strategic planning one in the next few months. We'll send out a doodle for that. Anything that we missed? Okay. Possible executive session to discuss negotiation strategies. Okay, no motion. Monthly superintendent evaluation, Section 1, goal and vision setting, and Section 4, curriculum and student support services. There being no further business before the board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.